The mind, when fed with belief and imagination, becomes the workshop of miracles. At a time when success felt far away and support was nowhere to be found, Napoleon Hill built something extraordinary, not with money or connections, but with the one thing no one could take from him, his imagination. The clock struck midnight in Napoleon Hill's study, but sleep was nowhere near. It was 1926, and despite years of research and interviews with America's most successful individuals, Hill found himself trapped in a paradox. He had gathered wisdom from the greatest minds of his generation, yet felt more alone than ever. His desk was cluttered with notes from conversations with Henry Ford, Thomas Edison, and Andrew Carnegie. Their insights were brilliant, transformative even. But they were busy men, titans of industry who had given him their time once, maybe twice. Now, when doubt crept in at midnight, when decisions loomed large and fear whispered loudly, Hill had no one to turn to. What would Edison do? He muttered, staring at a photograph of the inventor. What would Lincoln say about perseverance in the face of failure? The questions hung in the empty room, unanswered. Hill's financial situation was dire. Publishers remained skeptical of his work. His marriage strained under the weight of his obsession with success principles that hadn't yet brought success to his own life. That night, something shifted. Instead of merely wondering what his heroes would say, Hill did something that would have seemed insane to anyone watching. He closed his eyes and began to speak. "Mr. Lincoln," he said aloud to the darkness, "I invite you to join me. I need your wisdom on leadership and character." In his mind's eye, Hill saw the room transform. His simple study became a grand conference room. One by one, he invited others. Edison for his innovative thinking, Carnegie for his business acumen, Napoleon Bonaparte for strategy, Ralph Waldo Emerson for philosophy, Helen Keller for courage against impossible odds. 9 chairs around an imaginary table. 9 of history's most extraordinary minds. And Hill seeking their counsel. "Gentlemen and lady," he began, feeling slightly foolish but pressing on, "I'm struggling. I have knowledge but lack direction. I have purpose but lack clarity. What would you have me do?" The room was silent. Of course it was. These were figments of his imagination, constructs of his mind. Yet Hill waited, listened, opened himself to whatever might come. Then, in the silence, he heard it. Not an audible voice, but a thought that felt distinctly not his own. It carried Lincoln's measured cadence. "Mr. Hill, the question is not what we would have you do, but what you already know you must do. Fear is the only thing stopping you." Hill's eyes snapped open. He grabbed his pen and began writing. The words flowed differently now, with a clarity that had eluded him for months. Night after night, Hill returned to his invisible counsel. The ritual became sacred. At first, he felt self-conscious, even worried about his sanity. But the results were undeniable. Each session brought new insights, fresh perspectives, solutions to problems that had seemed insurmountable. Edison's voice challenged him. "You're thinking too small, Hill. Success isn't just about money, it's about service. How many lives will your work change?" Carnegie reminded him, "Systems, Hill. You need systems. Not just ideas, but organized plans." Helen Keller's presence spoke to his deepest fears. "I lived in darkness and silence, yet found light and voice. What's your excuse?" These weren't supernatural visitations. Hill knew that. They were his own mind, operating at a higher level, accessing wisdom he'd absorbed but hadn't fully integrated. By personifying these influences, by giving them voice and presence, he could tap into insights that normal thinking couldn't reach. His wife found him one night deep in conversation with his invisible board. "Napoleon, are you talking to yourself?" He turned, not embarrassed but energized. "No, Florence. I'm talking to the best parts of human achievement. I'm consulting with greatness." She watched, concerned. "And they answer you?" "Not in words you could hear, but in thoughts I couldn't have alone." "Watch." He closed his eyes again, posed a question about a chapter he was struggling with. After a moment of silence, he began writing furiously. Florence read over his shoulder, amazed. The words were Hill's, but the wisdom seemed to come from somewhere deeper. "It's not madness," Hill explained. "It's method. Imagination isn't just for children or artists. It's the bridge between what is and what could be. These counselors, they're not real in body, but they're real in influence. They help me think like Edison, lead like Lincoln, persist like Keller." The practice transformed Hill's work. Chapters that had been muddy became crystal clear. Principles that had been theoretical became practical. His invisible counselors pushed him to think bigger, write better, serve more completely. When Think and Grow Rich was finally published in 1937, it contained a chapter that would puzzle and inspire millions, The Sixth Sense. In it, Hill revealed his practice of the invisible counselors, knowing many would dismiss it as fantasy. But those who tried it discovered what Hill had learned, that imagination, directed with purpose and filled with belief, becomes a tool of transformation. The counselors were never about talking to the dead or channeling spirits. They were about elevating the living mind to its highest potential. Years later, a young reader wrote to Hill, "I thought you were crazy when I read about your invisible counselors. Then I tried it. I assembled my own board, my grandmother for wisdom, Einstein for problem-solving, Marie Curie for courage. I'm not crazy, am I?" Hill's response was simple: the only insanity is limiting yourself to one mind when you can access the patterns of greatness. Your counselors are as real as the results they produce. In his final years, Hill reflected on that desperate night when he first convened his invisible board. I was never alone, he realized. Every great mind that ever lived left patterns, principles, ways of thinking. Through imagination, we can access them all. We can stand on the shoulders of giants, not by climbing, but by thinking. The empty room had never been empty. It was filled with possibility, waiting for someone with the courage to see what wasn't there yet. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve. The only limits are the ones you refuse to outgrow.